There was a member of the Constituent Assembly called Dakshayani Velayudan, she was honestly the most badass member ever. I read up about her. By the way, this I am taking from this website called constitutionofindia.net. I am going to link it. I'm amazed that this is the first time I have come across this. It is a gold mine. It has recorded all of the speeches that were happening. It has the description of every single person who was a member of the Constituent Assembly. It has their histories. It is fantastic. It's so well documented, right? So I've taken a lot from here and I'm going to link it. And I highly recommend that whenever you have some time and you want to read up on the history, this is a better source than most other books that I've read on Indian history. All right.
Ooh.
So, okay. So the section about Velayudan, it says, she belonged to the Pulaya community, which was assigned to the rear end of the rigorously oppressive caste system. Pulayas were mostly engaged as lowly paid agricultural laborers and subjected to a range of humiliations, including being barred from using public roads, maintaining a certain distance from upper caste persons, and the women prohibited from covering their upper bodies with any garment. Velayudan emerged as a fierce critic of Congress politics, writing strongly against them in the All India Scheduled Caste Federation's weekly journal, Jai Bhim. At the same time, she was also critical of the AISCF, the All India Scheduled Caste Federation, right? She was also critical of the AISCF and B.R. Ambedkar's politics, specifically their demand for separate electorates for the scheduled castes. I want to give a caveat here in case anybody misunderstands. She was critical, not in the sense that, we don't need separate electorates. She was critical saying, if you don't address the psychological and the educational aspect, none of this separate electorate shit is going to work. And she mentioned that in the parliamentary debates as well, right? Basically, she faced sexist attacks from both Congress and AISCF, right? Now, we tend to do this. We tend to either glamorize a particular ideology a little too much, or we tend to completely demonize it. And there's only one ideology worth demonizing. You all know what it is, except that everybody has black and white. So AISCF was doing a lot of good work. Still men driven, right? We are talking about 1949, right? We have to understand all of these nuances as well, that they still had problems, right? I continue the quote from that website. Fervent petitions were addressed to the Congress High Command by opposing her nomination to the Constituent Assembly. In spite of these, she was elected to the body in 1946. In 1945, she had also been nominated to the Cochin Legislative Council. She did a lot of kick-ass work. A lot of work. At a point of time when the Pulaya community was... it is amazing that they could think of anything beyond their own survival, considering how the rest of the country was treating them. Right? It's amazing. Velayudan's point about the centralization of the constitution that we were talking about is worth quoting, right? So I'm going to read that out. The general criticism is that the draft is a replica of the 1935 Act, but we cannot forget the fact that we have got a legacy of the British imperialist administration, which goes by the name of the parliamentary system of government. The trouble was that we were depending on it, and we will have to depend on it even after the constitution is put into operation. Very practical viewpoint. She did not expect things to change overnight, right? It was impossible. It was 200 years of rule that we were getting over, right? I continue about her quote. The trouble arose from one point, namely, just as the British administrators who wanted to keep India centrally and provincially as a single unit, we in our bewilderment and anxiety tried to bring India centrally and provincially as a strong unit, and this centralization of power has led to all the troubles. There are two ways of making India a strong unit. One is by the method of centralization of power, and the other is by decentralization. But centralization is possible only through parliamentary system, which now goes under the safe words democratic methods. But in this draft, we can't find anything that is democratic, and decentralization is totally absent. She continues, it is a great tragedy that in making the constitution of a great country with 30 crores of people, with a great culture behind it and the great principles and teachings of the greatest man of the world on the surface, we were only able to produce a constitution that is totally foreign to us. The arguments put forward by the chairman of the drafting committee, she's talking about Dr. Ambedkar. Arguments put forward by the chairman of the drafting committee are not at all convincing. He has said that we are very late in making the draft constitution, but I can cite examples which will show his arguments are not sound. The drafting committee recommends that the President of the Union can nominate 15 members to the Council of States. Then another plea is that the term of the legislature should be more than 4 years. There is another misnomer in the draft, and that is about the selection or election of governors. The committee feels, let me read this out and then I will explain what she's talking about a little bit more. The committee feels that if the governor and the chief minister, who is responsible to the legislature, are elected by the people, then there will be friction between the two, right? But the remedy they have suggested is worse than the disease. There is a panel, and the president is to select from the panel one person as a governor. If the center happens to have a Congress president, and if a province is having a socialist majority, suppose the Socialist Party recommends 3 from their party. So 4 people would be nominated and the president would elect the governor, right? So suppose the Socialist Party recommends 3 from their party and 1 from the Congress. Certainly the president at the center will select the congressman to be the governor. Certainly this will lead to friction. We find that this direct recruitment to governorship is taken from the Government of India Act, and it shows that we have not left out even a comma from it. This is such an important aspect, right? And it is wild to me. She was a part of the Constituent Assembly. She was very clearly coming from the ground up. She was not involved in the drafting. It's a very important point. Like, the governor is put into power by the president, right? The chief minister is elected by the people. If you are not allowing people to take decisions for their democratic situations, right? How is it a democracy? We criticize the electoral vote systems in US. Ours it's different, but it is same in a way, right?
Theoretically, yes. I get where you're coming from.
Yeah. There are issues, right? And that did arise from the fact that centralization happened, right? When the Constitution was formed, we were obviously in an extremely vulnerable situation. We had just gotten rid of the British. We had gone through the massively traumatic event of partition. And we were grappling with the concept of being a country for the first time. We had never been a country before, right? So we needed the union to have certain powers. But as the assembly members pointed out, not just Velayudhan, but other members as well, like, I have read the debates and this was a constant train of thought, that not granting sufficient autonomy to the states meant that this small group of elites was determining everything for everyone, including the people that they did not represent. And that was bound to create problems, right? Like, Velayudhan was completely right. Like, what she said in 1949, we are still proving correct, right? For instance, in 2020, the farm laws were amended to allow farmers to sell their produce directly to agribusiness companies at a predetermined rate. Do you guys remember this? In 2020, this would happen. So the BJP government passed this, and they would ease the control of the center over the production and sale of agricultural produce. That's what they said. And the neoliberals were overjoyed about it because of their delusion that's called free market, right? But the country saw massive protests by the farmers because it was so simple and it was so easily visible, right? One, this would take away the guarantee of the minimum price that the government sets. Now, that itself has a lot of issues, right? But there is a minimum price. You can build on it. You can make that system better, right? You take that away and put them at the mercy of businesses. Historically, has anybody ever thrived when they have been put at the mercy of businesses and their top brass? That has never happened, right? In a decentralized structure, the states would still be able to levy taxes or regulate the markets that benefit the local economies. They would consider the needs, and not just like economic needs, right? Social needs and the ecological needs. Like, especially in agriculture, every state differs from one another, right? It's very different growing something in Punjab versus growing something in the Northeast, right?
Yeah.
And considering we are such a large fucking landmass, it would absolutely need to be governed state to state. All of that goes away when the center can just with one act overrule the decisions made by the states. I am not saying that a decentralized state-led structure is perfect. It would still need work, but it is definitely a better starting point than centralizing all of the power with the center or the majority of the power. Like, they have the power to overrule a lot of things, right? Technically, agriculture is under state, but if you are at the center, you have the power to overrule it, right? This veto is problematic. And my argument is that the key reason for this disconnect, again, I would remind everybody, I am not a journalist, I'm not a historian. This is my inference, right? The key reason for this disconnect between what the country needed and the draft seemed to be that, except Dr. Ambedkar, the entire drafting committee was arguably quite disconnected from the realities of the country. They were from highly, highly privileged backgrounds, right? Even if you look at the entire Constituent Assembly, right, there were only 15 women in the Constituent Assembly. Not one of them were a part of the drafting committee, which was wild. Why not? Out of the 299 members of the Constituent Assembly, 149 were Hindus. Majority were from privileged castes. Basically, it was their version of MBAs launching tech startups, right? And don't get me wrong, the Constitution was exceptional work. It was really, really difficult, and there was very little precedent to go on, right? This RSS narrative of, oh, we just took our colonial hangover and put it on paper. No, friend, that's not what happened. There was so much work that was going on. But that doesn't mean that there weren't issues. And like all of history, you need to know the good and you need to know the bad. And the real bad. So just remember that there are real issues with the Constitution, but it is not even a little bit of what the right wing claims.